They say if you stand quietly in the halls of Waverly Hills, you might hear them. The whispers of the forgotten, the sighs of the ailing, the steps of those who remain. Nurses, patients, children. Their presences linger into the shadows. But what if you stepped inside and the past reached out? This is Waverly Hills. Today we explore one of America's most haunted sites and venture into the death tunnel, where the departed were hidden away, but their echoes endure. Welcome to Haunted Archives from the vault of Lisa's Haunted Cottage, where history meets the unexplained. Tonight, we're going to uncover the story of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, a site of hope and heartbreak where tuberculosis took hold and some spirits seem unwilling to let go. Light your candles and walk with me as we open the door to Waverly. It begins in 1910 on a hill outside Louisville, Kentucky. Tuberculosis, a relentless epidemic with no cure in sight. Tuberculosis, or TB, spreads quickly through airborne droplets from coughs or speech targeting the lungs. Symptoms include a chronic cough, often bloody, along with fever, night sweats, weight loss, and exhaustion. In the early 1900s, before antibiotics in the 1940s, it was a global killer, claiming millions and known as the White Plague. Waverly Hills started modestly, open porches and large windows to harness fresh air and sunlight as treatment. But as cases surged, it expanded by 1926 into a massive 5-story structure, accommodating over 400 patients. Estimates vary. Some say 63,000 deaths over 5 decades, though records only indicate about 6,000. That's still way too many. There were some tragic treatments, as well as the death tunnel. The treatments were experimental and often harsh. Ribs were removed, lungs artificially collapsed, all in a desperate attempt for relief amid the gasps and pleas of the patients there. And when all failed, there was the death tunnel. Built in 1924, initially for logistics, delivering supplies like coal and food during Kentucky's tough winters, this 500-foot passageway has stairs on one side for staff, a ramp on the other for carts. A steam-powered winch with cables hauled loads up the incline. As the deaths mounted, sometimes daily, it became a discreet exit. Bodies, shrouded in sheets, were attached to the cables and lowered smoothly to hearses or trains below, concealed by trees to spare the living from the despair. Known formally as the body chute, the death tunnel definitely earned its grim nickname. The rails still bear the marks of countless journeys, with a lingering scent of damp stone that you can still smell today. Today, explorers report an unease that's very easily felt. Some hear wheezing sounds and footsteps that halt abruptly. Beyond the history, the hauntings draw us in. Room 502, per the local lore, holds some of the sanatorium's darkest tales. Situated near the old nurses' station on the 5th floor, it was reportedly used as staff quarters or a recovery area for ill nurses. In 1928, a nurse named Mary Hillenberg allegedly hanged herself from a light fixture or pipe in the room. Legends suggest she was unmarried and pregnant, possibly by a doctor or the facility's owner, and had contracted tuberculosis herself, leading to overwhelming despair. Just 4 years later, in 1932, another nurse is said to have jumped or fallen from the room's window or the rooftop patio above, though some accounts question if this was suicide or an accident. These tragedies have fueled reports of intense activity. Visitors often describe sudden waves of sadness or hopelessness washing over them upon entering. Apparitions of a woman in white, believed to be one of the nurses, appear in the doorway or by the window, sometimes gesturing as if to beckon or warn. Shadow figures dart across the room, door slams without cause, and some feel unseen hands pushing them or cold touches on their skin. EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, captured here include whispers like "get out" or cries for help, and investigators have reported screams echoing from the empty space. While some photos purporting to show ghosts in the window have been debunked or edited, the room's reputation as one of Waverly's most active spots persists. It draws paranormal enthusiasts for overnight investigations. Then there's Timmy, one of Waverly's most endearing yet eerie spirits, often encountered on the 3rd or 4th floor. Legend portrays him as a 6 or 7-year-old boy who succumbed to tuberculosis during his stay at the sanatorium, though no historical records confirm a specific child by that name. It's likely a composite of the many young patients who perished there. Timmy's known for his playful nature, seemingly unaware or unburdened by his fate, and is said to interact with visitors in childlike ways. Reports include hearing giggles or a child's voice calling out, balls rolling across the floor on their own, especially when left as an offering, and even gentle tugs on clothing as if inviting people to play. Paranormal teams have captured EVPs of a young boy responding to questions, saying things like play or repeating names, and toys left in the hallways have been found moved or activated overnight. Some visitors describe seeing a small shadow figure darting around corners or a translucent boy chasing an invisible ball down the corridors. Unlike the more ominous energies elsewhere, Timmy's presence is often described as innocent and heartwarming, though it underscores the tragic loss of young lives to the epidemic. Laughter drifts through the empty spaces, then fades into silence, leaving many to wonder if he's still seeking companionship in the afterlife. There's been some famous investigations done at Waverly. Renowned teams have investigated the big names: Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, Paranormal Lockdown. Waverly has been featured on the Travel Channel, Sci-Fi Channel, and many others. Thermal imaging captured figures in doorways when some of these groups have been there. The figures would appear, but then vanish in an instant. A recording preserved in a child's voice. Cold spots, unexplained coughs, breaths as if someone struggles. I'm having unexplained coughs myself. Excuse me. Which leads up to my visit at Waverly. So in 2010, I visited Waverly myself. I had seen it on television shows. I had seen the big, the famous groups who had gone there. I had seen books about Waverly, but nothing could prepare me for when I stepped inside of the building. When you enter, the air feels dense. It's not merely dust, but it's layered with unspoken histories. The walls seem to hold their breath. So when I was there, my ex and I were with a group of other paranormal investigators. You can, get a group of people and go for the night. 6-7 hours. And we had done that. And a lot of the group had gone through the death tunnel. We somehow missed the memo when we were on different floorways, just him and I. So when we made it to the death tunnel, it was just the two of us because everybody else had already gone. As you walk through the gate that you encounter as you step into the death tunnel, that space is even smaller, than the hospital, and it's can be very overwhelming. It's very, very dark. And as I said earlier, there are steps on one side and a ramp on the other. And as I stood there with my light, shining it down the tunnel, it was pitch black at the other end, of course. It's 500 feet, and it was nighttime when we were there. I could feel all of the emotions that had gone through that tunnel, all of the people who had died, and it's very overwhelming. And as we were standing there and we had not got in that far, I had a fear that the metal gate that we had walked through when we walked in originally, I had a feeling or a fear that it was going to close and lock us in. I'm not even sure if it still locks. But after about 10 minutes, I couldn't take any more of the energy that I was feeling in that death tunnel. I'm sure some of that is psychological, you know what happened there. That people who had died from tuberculosis, went through that tunnel. You know that their families never saw them again. Even the energies that the people working there at the time must have felt on a day-to-day basis. Finally, I couldn't stay in there any longer. And so we turned and left, not making it down the death tunnel, which, by the way, I had been saying for many months that I wanted to walk the entire 500 feet. And of course, that never happened. On a side note, when we were investigating up up on the 5th floor. I took my recorder and I set it down, and I asked the same question that many paranormal investigators ask. Is anyone here with us? Now, where we were was, it's sometimes called the porch, but it's in that open space on the outside of the building where they would wheel the patients to get sunlight and fresh air because they thought at the time that that would heal them from the tuberculosis. So we walked around, it was kind of a break from going through, the darker interiors of the hallways, um, you know, all of the other parts of the hospital that we had been through. So we were standing there and I took my recorder and I kind of set it down on the ledge and I asked, is anyone here? And I didn't feel anything at the time when I asked the question. And also, the entire time I was there, I really didn't feel any negative energy at all. There were some times, such as in the death tunnel and a few other times throughout the night where I did feel some unease, um, and thought, because I had heard different stories. I was in room 502 myself, but I never felt anything negative. Um, I felt more despair that night more than anything else. But anyway, when I went over my EVP recording or my audio recording, I had gotten a direct response to the question, is anyone here? When we were standing on the 5th floor. Of course, at the time, I didn't know anyone had answered me, but they had. And it was a man. It sounded male, like a male voice. But the thing is, he didn't say anything. The EVP that I ended up getting was only labored breathing. It was someone literally struggling to breathe in and struggling to breathe out. And I remember when I realized what I had captured, when I captured that EVP. And when I heard it, tears started rolling down my eyes. Because I felt kind of in that instant, once again, just like I did when I was there, all of the suffering, all of the hopes of the patients' families, of people working there. And it's very sad and overwhelms me with sadness. But it is a great place to go, and I'm glad that I went. I did feel the burden of the countless lives when I traveled those halls. They weren't merely lost. They were discreetly removed to sustain hope for the rest of them. The past persists. It waits. It observes. It seeks remembrance. Believer or skeptic, Waverly Hills clings to its history like an indelible mark, and some marks never truly vanish. Thank you for joining this exploration of Waverly Hills. I hope it stirred your curiosity about the echoes we leave. Share with me. Have you sensed a presence in a silent place? Heard an unexplained voice? Leave your thoughts below in the comments. Subscribe and hit that bell. And join me next week for another dive into another haunting place. Until then, keep your lights on, your curiosity alive, and remember, some stories endure.